There we go.
I don't see the recording sign. Is that because I already
that might also be because Yolanda already started recording.
Okay.
I see it up in the corner.
I got the warning when I came on.
So, happy Saturday, everyone. Welcome to the Don and Dan show. And I was going to do one more thing here. There we go. We have a special event today. The Don and that's enough of that. Let's undo that.
It's your 100th show.
Yeah, I looked for little things that said 100th anniversary, and all the things on Google came up with 100 years. No, not please no. So welcome to the almost weekly event, spelled W-E-E-K, sometimes W-E-A-L-Y, where you, our colleagues, join in. I had this speech all prepared, but I forgot it. Stage fright. Maybe if I held a microphone. One of the things I've heard recently is be yourself. Don't try to be formal if you're not. Anyway, where you, our colleagues and fellow Square Dance callers, get to talk about and listen about things that may enhance our jobs, whatever. And we've come a long way, and it's been about 2.5 years, but 100 sessions. I don't think Dan and I really had that in mind when we started this out. Actually, we were out of our minds. We didn't have anything in mind. Just a tiny bit of background. We were hit by a pandemic. Nobody left the house. I learned about Zoom because of my wife's clinic closed down and she had to work from home. And at the same time, somebody on one of the Facebook Square Dance groups said, gee, now that we can't call, we should take this time to learn. And so I put 2 and 2 together in my mind and came up with 7.5, I think, and said, gee, we should do something like this. I don't really know how to do this, but we could do a trial and figure what it's about. And I called Dan, who I knew slightly at the time and know quite a bit better these days, and said, what do you think? Should we do a trial? And he said, I've already signed up for Zoom. We don't have to worry about the 45-minute limit. And I said, should we invite a few people to see how it goes? And he said, I've already advertised this on Newbie callers. The whole world's going to come. And I asked him yesterday on the phone, how do you remember it starting? And he has a totally different story, but wow, it's evolved into something that I'm glad it has. Gotten to talk to a lot of you, got to know people that I knew better, got to meet new people in the process. Sometimes got to figure out how to work Zoom. And after we hear Dan's side of the story, we're just curious why you guys keep coming back. You know, what have you learned? What do you wish you have learned? What do you hope to learn in the future, etc. Dan, tell us your side of the story, and you had some good ideas yesterday of ways of provoking conversation. So take it away.
Well, I don't think mine was that different. I remember that I had signed up for Zoom and said on Newbie callers, let's do this. And I think we did 1 or 2 where we talked about where we kind of did some sort of combinations or choreo in your head or some exercise like that. And then Don said, hey, I can actually find speakers for this. And that's when we got a little bit more formal about it. Yeah, I guess the things that I was thinking about for talking about are there topics we haven't covered that Don and I have, for instance, been trying to find speakers outside of square dancing to try to draw on. We had that one gentleman who's a DJ, which I thought was a fantastic session, but I'm interested in more of those. I think I'm also kind of generally burning out on Zoomness and COVIDness a bit. But yeah, what have you gotten out of it? What more do you want to get out of it? How do we morph and grow this into something else interesting? And where are you and this and square dancing going in a way that kind of we can all move together in?
One of the things that I've been finally, after a while, keeping score on this and have noticed, I've been keeping track of how many people we've had show up. And we've had, I think, a low of 12, counting Dan and myself, and a high of, I didn't record that number, but it was 40 or 50. But we used to average 20 to 30, and now we're more averaging 15 to 20. I would like to say that I'm proud to say that I don't think we've ever, even though it was a pandemic, I don't think we've ever transmitted COVID from one of us to another one here. Yay, Zoom. And Dan, you had some statistics too, because Dan's been recording these and posting them, and I finally made a playlist of it. Thanks an awful lot to Mark Hart. Mark has been posting links to these also, along with other similar type of sessions. And Dan is compiling a list with more than just a playlist of mine, but a lot more details, so you can, it takes a little longer to scan through it, but you get a lot more information if you're interested. We should be posting a link to that, although Dan has already. But it's been interesting with the videos to see how many people have gone back and watched the videos, whether it's worth putting them up there or not.
So yeah, I don't know what a YouTube view means. I think that on a video this long, it means somebody actually watched for more than 15 minutes, but I'm not sure. It could be 15 seconds. Anyway, our all-time leader is Tony Parks on diversity and square dancing. I suspect because that has the right keywords that sent the algorithm and people who otherwise wouldn't be interested in modern Western square dancing calling toward it. Surprisingly, our other top draw is Paul Cote. We have the Need for Showmanship one got 444 views to Tony's 451, and his Revitalizing Square Dancing got 278. And after that, we're down into Bruce Holmes on Growing a Club at 240, Tony Parks on the History of Square Dancing at 162, Gerhard on Choreography Management at 157, and a bunch of others kind of down in the 150 range. Betsy Gata, Lawrence Coulet, Mike Seastrom, Aaron Byers, and then we fall off. And then somewhere down here on the very first page, because I sorted the wrong way, we have Clark Baker and Reopening at 16, and Mel Wilkerson and Dealing with Difficult People at 18. And boy, that was a hell of a lot better presentation than 18 views.
Yeah, if you haven't watched that, you really should go and watch it. He did an amazing job of a talk that he's given for his professional life also, and well prepared, and some pretty good very good information there. So I have gotten feedback from quite a few people that can't make Saturday mornings or whatever time it is where you are, and but thank you for the videos, because we enjoy going to watch them. Oh, I had one more useless comment. What was that? Anyway, really, we've tried to run the gamut of topics, and I think we've done pretty good. And I think much to our surprise, Dan and mine, that the history ones with Tony Parks and David Millstone rather. David unfortunately is in Prague doing some contra calling, so won't be able to join us. But they've been very popular, and they've been very good too. But anyway, what did you get out of it? What didn't you get out of it? Say something, someone. We thought conversation would come easily.
Well, first of all, access to people from around the world for callers. I mean, I didn't know anybody in this group, I think, before I started. I learned that I had to follow the lady and be myself, just like you were talking about before. And I learned that I could do more than I thought I could. You know, that I was on the floor a while ago and we didn't have a full square, and somebody said, "Oh, here's a mic, and go for it." And I put a piece of patter on, and without having anything to look at, I kept the square going for the whole time, about 5 minutes. And I thought, there's no way I could have done that before this kind of, you know. So I'm actually learning.
One of the things that you said, look, Yolanda, that reminded me of one of the things I've gotten out of this is an appreciation for the time zones around the earth and trying to pick a time that would work for east and west coast of US and Canada, would work for Europe, and some Japanese and Australians have even stayed up late and joined us. It really does give you an appreciation for not only meeting people and meeting the culture of square dancing in different parts of the world, and the fact that there's a 99% overlap. It's been quite the thing.
Well, then I find like some callers are interested in the singing call aspect, and some are more into the patter, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's been interesting getting to know everybody. On and off some of these meetings, because some of these meetings have led to email exchanges and Zoom sessions, you know, kind of thing. So yeah.
I've also, towards the end of the series, realized for me it's a social event. Like hanging with you guys. We try and remind people that square dancing is a social event. Well, so are square dance callers when they get together.
Okay. So I noticed
Well,
Keith. Sorry, go Cece.
I was gonna say for me, this allowed me access to caller training as a new caller. I had just started right before COVID hit, and not only that, I live in a rural area, and the nearest caller from me is an hour and a half away. So I have to travel to get floor time with an actual caller or any type of training, and this afforded me to, between this Saturday session, I don't always have my video on or my mic on, but I have, if I haven't been in a session, I've listened to it. Some of them I've rewatched 2, 3, 4 times because of what I was needing to learn to teach my dancers here. And then with Mel's, I rarely am able to participate in it, but I watch them. And some of those, again, I've watched sections of them a few times to learn, because it also gave a way to rewind what was just taught and really take it in and break it down instead of having it thrown at you and not having a way to go back and review it.
Totally agree.
So.
So let's hear from some of you guys that have presented and give you a chance to.
This is Hal Barnes. I have a suggestion maybe for a new format for some of the presentations. I did the one on asymmetrics, which I considered to be a very obscure topic that probably nobody really did much on. And at the end, there was all kinds of people who had actually done work on this, and they had different angles and different views of it, and they chimed in on it. And I was pleasantly surprised by that. So one idea for a new format would be more or less what I would call an open mic type of a session, where you propose a topic. And well, I'm impressed by the level of knowledge and experience of the people that show up here. So here would be the format. You would propose a topic that people kind of find interesting, and you have a moderator, but it's an open mic. You let everybody, instead of having like a primary presenter and questions, you present the topic, you have an open mic, you let everybody chime in with their experience and angle, because you'll get lots of different viewpoints, and you have the moderator to keep the thing on topic and to make sure that nobody dominates. But there's so much experience in this group that I think having an open mic based session on a given topic would be really interesting.
I think that we often get there. I know Don has always been trying for, let's do a, let's keep the presentation short and turn it into a conversation. And of course, the presentation then invariably runs 45 minutes, and then we end up talking for another hour or so afterwards. So I think we have kind of been there. I think one of the challenges, and Don, I hope you'll come in with a different perspective in a moment, is that we've kind of mined the square dancing community for ideas. And one of the challenges is that whatever square dancing needs to grow, it's got to be something that comes from outside that community, because we haven't figured out how to do it inside the community. Don, hit it.
I was just scrolling through my spreadsheet here. I thought I had written down one of them as open mic, but I didn't find that. Yeah, we tried to do it. It sounds like a great idea, Hal. In fact, that's what we're doing now. It's open mic talk, not even on a given topic. Well, a sort of a given topic, but we try to present something on a topic and then hear other opinions. I mean, one of the things that I think that's made this a successful group is the fact that we do open it up to discussion and try to moderate it, at least for the first hour, and then it goes all over the place. I think now might be a good time. Mickey, turn your car radio on.
All right, I have muted Mickey.
Mickey's on a 3 or 4 hour drive back from a dance weekend or something on that order. I don't recall exactly. One of the things now might be a good time to bring up is that that we've done 100 of these things. We've gone for 2.5 years, and we're thinking it's time to change the format a little differently than Hal thought, but instead of doing it weekly, doing it when a good topic comes up. There's Jeremy. Thanks for joining, Jeremy, one of our previous presenters. We're thinking of doing this when a good topic or a good presenter comes up, and not doing it every week. For those of you that check Facebook regularly to see what and when and who, reminder that I have an email list that I could and gladly put you on, so you will be notified when another one comes up. I know. We're talking about history being kind of an interesting thing that we've explored. We had Mike Seastrom talk about one of his mentors and one of the legends in our activity, Bob Osgood. We have nobody scheduled for next week. Take a vacation. The week after, we have Kip Garvey, who will be talking about Bill Davis, who was one of the legends in a specific field in our activity. And several weeks later, we will be having somebody talk about Bill Peters. When I was trying to figure out who best to talk about Bill Peters, everybody came up with, well, Bill Davis. Unfortunately, both of them passed away. They were very good friends, but that's some of the stuff coming up in the future, and not necessarily in the near future. But again, if you want to be put on the mailing list or reminded, it's donbeck@donbeck.org. I'm not an ogre. Well, some people think What do some of you guys think about Hal's idea of just come up with a topic and let the rest of you talk before the 30-minute presentation?
Yeah, well, I have one thing that I'd be interested in if you did open mic, and that'd be, I'd like to see how other people do their first night presentations. After a few years of doing this sort of thing myself, I keep doing the same thing pretty much the same way all the time. And, little by little, I'll borrow stuff from other people that looks good and seems to work. But sort of like to see what other people do and kind of why they teach things in certain orders. I know a lot of people do the Sicilian circle thing and then go back into squares. Some start right in squares. I'd be especially interested in when you start right from squares, what do you teach first? And, how do you get them moving and keep them moving so they're not bored thinking this is too much like school? Aside from that, I would say if you want to know what college schools were like in the old days, I'm probably one of the few here that attended Dr. Lloyd Shaw's Scranton's Foundation workshops in Colorado back in the last century. I won't say exactly when, but they were totally different than they are now, I'll tell you. And they were pretty much on presentation. They expected you to know how to put things together, and it was pretty much social and interactive. So anyhow, I'd sure like to see something along the lines of how do you start your classes?
That reminds me, Joe, we did have Bob Riggs on talking about Lloyd Shaw and the Lloyd Shaw Foundation and such.
Yep.
Another one of our fill us in on our background. We had Betsy Gata talk about party nights. When I think, and last week in particular, we had Ted Lazat talking about what he does first night, but in an accelerated group, which is not necessarily what you need. I tend to do party nights and first night of class pretty much the same. And I think we've talked about maybe trying to have a presentation. I try to teach as little as I can and use as much variety as I can. And I think we talked about presenting some of that choreo at some time, and I put a note down about that, Joe. Good idea.
Thanks.
So I think kind of related to that, I would be interested in, kind of your observations of the Lloyd Shaw School. I spend quite a bit of money on voice lessons and various other ancillary things. I'm looking at spending another bit of money and quite a bit of time on a song circle coaching series. And I saw the GCA Caller School notice go up about I guess Ottawa next year, and thought, oh, another caller school would be super fun, especially since I haven't been calling much. And the last caller school I went to was with the same teachers that are happening this year, and they said, Dan, why are you here? And I'm thinking, because there's so much to learn, but there's so much to learn that isn't part of the standard color school curriculum. And so, yeah, I want to hear more about the showmanship. I want to find other things about acting and presentation and getting in front of audiences and that sort of thing, which I think have to come up from outside the square dance community, because the square dance community is shrinking and has its niche of customers, its audience that is not a growing audience.
I've thought for years that there are many other professions that have overlap with some part of ours. I think the session I did on teaching was based on a lot I learned. And by the way, my video on my channel, that's had more views than any other, aside from my talk about mental image, where I've learned a lot from a person that did a lot of piano teaching, and I learned learning techniques. And as Dan mentioned, we had a local DJ on talking about performance techniques. I'm sure a lot of us that have been in color education for a long time just hear us all repeating the same old thing that we've learned. But to hear an outsider on one of our specialties on such would be, if you have suggestions of a field or a person, would be good. Bill, you've got your electronic hand up. I'm remembering.
Yes, I did. I just saw Daryl just made a posting about how about a session on mentoring the newbies. This is something that I would be interested in. Now, I may be in a whole different category because I don't know if anybody else that is participating with the session now or past sessions, but I'm a retired caller not by choice, by a situation that had to step away from it. But this allows me to keep in with the activity. And though I never went to a caller school per se, I went to a caller in Sacramento who did occasionally would do a session with half dozen to 10 or so callers, and we'd meet every week for 8 weeks and to learn the fundamentals, and then went out on our own. So I started in 1981 calling and stepped away from it around, I think 2015. So I have well over 40 years of behind the mic, and I've gotten a lot of experience and knowledge of what they're, and I enjoy working with newer callers and relating. If they're having issues, I can relate things that happened to me in that situation, on the job training, as they might want to call it. So like I say, I don't know if I'm in a category by myself, being not calling anymore, but still like to keep involved. So that's all I got to say about it. Thank you very much.
Daryl put in the chat, somebody mentioned, so I finally looked at the chat because I don't normally, am not able to do, but he said, Daryl, you talked about a session on mentoring newbies. I want to hear what you have to say about that in just a moment. We have had, what was it? Some things along those lines, but I agree that would be more thing. And for the rest of you, Daryl and I spoke last week, the week before, about he and I doing a session on mental image. It's interesting. I teach mental image in a step-by-step, so you can really do an awful lot with it. Whereas Daryl has been using it and learned it about the same time I did from Jay King, where he uses the very basic, do this, do this, do this, and then you can do an awful lot of ad-lib choreography without knowing tons of mental image stuff. And the more I think about that, Daryl, the more it might be a really good way just to start people off, which is what you've been doing. I know Brian Hodgkins does about the same, an awful lot with not with an awful little. I'm sorry not to put that, but Brian is an Australian and frequently is able to join us. Anyway, Daryl, tell me your thoughts about how we would mentor newbie callers.
We have a lot of callers and a lot of them that I see on these sessions all the time. Very good callers. And I know a lot of the national callers, been familiar with them and on, first come basis with them for many, many years. One of my favorites was Marshall Flippo, of course, everybody's favorite, right? Marshall, he could call one of the best dances for just any crowd that you came to, but he didn't have a clue as how to tell somebody else how to do what he did. And we've got a lot of those guys. And I've got an idea we have some of them on the screen right now as I look out there. My main concern for probably the last 15 or 20 years at least has been starting brand new, never picked up mic before callers. They don't need to learn how to sight resolve up front, but they need something that's going to tell them how to move the dancers. And that's something that after somebody's called for many, many years, they just have a feel for it, that it's part of their language, it's part of what they know. They don't have to think about it. And to them, it always seems so simple, but it is so complex what we do. So that's what I would think would be worth talking about. Where you have the one caller, one club, and somebody comes up and says, how do you do that? I would like to do that. I know we have a mentoring guideline in Caller Lab. It's available. I don't know how many have looked it up or use it. Probably too few, but typically those guidelines have a lot more there than what's absolutely necessary for starting the brand new beginner. But yeah, that's something along that line in any case.
So, Daryl, are you talking about we should have something here to mentor new callers, or teach, or talk, let the experienced callers here discuss how to mentor new callers?
Right, and a discussion on that. If we're opened up, say, okay, what would you do? How would you start somebody that's never, that's a good dancer, but has never done any calling, but they'd like to give it a try? How would you find out if they have any rhythm, if you're not that familiar with them? There are some things that are very, very important to a new caller. Everything from getting them started choreographically, musically, what, these are huge subjects that we talk about here on these sessions. I think bringing it down to a size and an understanding for somebody that doesn't know anything about what we do might be useful. And everybody that's on the screen right now has ideas, but everybody on the screen that's here right now could benefit from some of the experiences of the caller trainers. Does that make any kind of sense at all?
Yeah.
No, we've got other accredited caller coaches. The accreditation means that you have more damned information in your head than anybody really needs. And the idea of the ACC accredited coaches is we're supposed to be able to put it in out in a manner that somebody doesn't know how to call can get started. Pretty easy to leave those people behind. Gone. We're going to need callers to rebuild this activity. We're going to need to, excuse the term, dumb down our activity a little bit. And the easiest way for new callers to get started is dumbing down the activity a little bit, keeping it entertaining and keeping it fun. But we need to change the way we think, the ones that are here right now, and the other callers out there that have groups. There's somebody on one of the social networks the other day said, I don't know. He said, I was hoping to get to call a tip at the dance. I asked the caller if I could, and the caller said, you have to ask the president of the club. President of the club says, we don't do that. How do I handle this? How do I get started? Well, one of the first things, I'm sure that any of you that mentor callers, one of the first things you say, you don't go ask to call a tip. You get a big badge that says caller in training or new caller or whatever, so they can see it really big, and you wait for them to ask you. But things like that might not seem important, but they are very, very important. I'll shut up. Sorry. Carry on.
I think that's an important topic. One of the things that I noticed was that as I was going back through with Mark earlier this morning, trying to figure out what we had and hadn't correctly gotten into the various playlists and on our various web pages linking to all of these videos, was that I had missed the accredited caller coach panel on one of the playlists that we did back in August of 2020. And that was a kerfluffle that blew up after I said some things about how I didn't think that the standard caller lab curriculum and the way that the caller coaches were teaching was working well, and that as callers got over a certain level, they got to a place where they weren't using language in a way that new callers could understand. And I think in the course of this COVID experience, I have now gotten to the other side of that, and I can't talk to newbies anymore. Thank you, Don, for Metal Image. But and I think so, yeah, I would like to hear more from the newbies about what their struggles are so that I can get back into that headspace. And one of the other ones that I was reminded of was the session we did with the DJ friend of Don's, and I want more from outside the activity, because I want to figure out why we've become so ossified. Well, I've only been doing this for a decade, but yeah, why it seems to be talking around itself in the way it has been.
Daryl, when I misinterpreted what you said initially, it made me think, would you guys think if we had a session where we advertised this with square dancers instead of just with callers, and said, if anybody's interested in thinking about becoming a caller, we're having a session where we will talk about, what you answer your questions and talk about what you have to do to become one, and a step earlier than just what Daryl said, and then go to the Daryl one after that. I'm looking through my spreadsheet, and I can't find, but we had somebody on growing a club, but he's also written a book called So You Want to Be a Caller.
I believe that was Bruce Holmes.
Yeah, it was Bruce Holmes, right?
Yeah.
I remember his name. But basic question, what would you guys think of advertising a session for callers, for dancers who think they might want to know more about becoming a caller? Joe's got a thumb up.
So I probably have a very unpopular opinion about this particular subject, which is I actually want to discourage people who aren't going to put the effort in. We get so many of these callers that get up there and they can do one or two great singing calls and they can't do anything else for anything. They don't want to learn. They just want to know how to do one or two things and skate by. And then you end up with these people, these callers, they go and they do demos and they're terrible. And people go, well, I don't want to square dance. That looks like junk, So I want to be very careful with the people that we're trying to cultivate to be square dance callers. So I'm almost, like unpopular opinion here, I know, but I don't want people who are going to be crappy at it. Period.
Jeremy, that if we had a session for beginner for wannabe caller wannabes and explained what it takes, especially with you there telling them you got to learn more than just 2 singing calls, maybe that could filter out some of these people.
I notice Daryl's hand went up.
Yeah. Before this gets too far away, I want to remind everybody that these newbies, real newbies, I like to call them, because we're all sort of new at a different stage, but the real newbies, typically speaking, they only have 1 tip per month or 2 to get up there and do their thing in front of dancers. Naturally, they're going to do the same things over and over again. They're going to do the things that they know the best, or they think show themselves off the best. And that's one of the things that I told this person on social media. I said, hey, dancers and callers will support you as long as they feel that you're progressing. And they feel like you're stuck in a rut and not going anywhere. But I don't think anybody ever told this particular caller that. And that's what a mentor is for. They should tell them that. Now, if you had a session that said, okay, mentors at the grassroots level, you have somebody starting, let them know these things. And they'll work maybe a little harder to get their spot up on the stage that once a month. If they don't have a club that's waiting for them to learn, so the club will have a caller, they get very, very few opportunities to get up and progress. So it's stuff like that. And Jeremy, I'm glad you said that, because I might not have had a chance to say what I just did. But thank you.
Well, that's exactly what I was talking about. Is I don't want somebody who's not willing to progress, not willing to learn, and doesn't want to get up and progress what they're doing and learn more and get to a point where they are getting better every week or every month or even every year. But I see so many callers, they get to a certain point and they go, this is good enough, and they stay there forever. And those are people that
are these people that you're training?
No, absolutely not. I won't train them.
That's the problem. Everybody doesn't know what you know, Jeremy. Everybody doesn't know what I know. And newbies, you need to have some kind of a plan there, or share what we do know.
Right. Yeah. And I believe that this session would be good for that, to make sure that, I think this should be 2 different sessions. First, you should talk about what everybody's plan is for getting somebody started, and then actually have a session for people and getting them started.
Hi, Don.
I noticed that Mickey has unmuted himself, and after Mickey, John has his hand up. Mickey, go.
Yeah, I just wanted to say hello and congratulations to the group for the 100 for the century session. And I'm just calling a dance and just got to break off 1 tip, so I could stop by and it's a good thing to have. So keep it on, and if I can help out with a session, more than welcome to do so.
While Mickey's still here, John, I'm going to put you on hold for just 1 more second. But one of the things we mentioned earlier, I did, and I can't remember if CC or Yolanda, about meeting people from other parts of the world. I think it was Yolanda. It'd be interesting. We have some Swedes and Germans with us. It'd be interesting to hear from people in other parts of the world what they got out of hearing all the Americans might have. But those of you out of the U.S., out of North America, think about what you can contribute after we hear from John, who's had his hand up patiently for a long time.
Yeah, I've got to go back on stage now. So maybe I give you a picture from the crowd dancing in a little while. Take care. All the best.
Thanks,
Cool.
Mickey. Bye.
Bye.
All right. John, take it away.
Thanks, Mickey.
Well, I heard, who's is that Mickey making noise still?
I think
All
I
right.
muted him.
I'm a perfect example of what Jeremy just said. I've been playing around with this calling now since like 2015. I got a whole ton of records. I've got all the equipment I want, but I fit right into Jeremy's category. I just don't have a desire to spend the time to do it. So I just weeded myself out of the crowd. I don't think I'll ever be a square dance caller unless some epiphany happens and I've been struck with the gift of resolving, but it'll never happen for me. And on the other hand, I'm here just because you guys are sort of like a little family I see on Saturday morning. But I agree with Jeremy that unless you're willing to put in the time and the effort, it's not really something you should do. Because I think I'd be, when I was here, I'd be wasting other people's time trying to figure out how to get me to do it right. And I just don't have the time I want to dedicate to it. So I weeded myself out of the pond. I've got all the stuff sitting here at my house, and someday maybe it'll happen. But right now, I'm just here for, I guess, the entertainment value and to keep my toe in the pool.
So being in that category, John, the question I would have is where's your stumbling block here, and how can we help you get over it? Because that seems to be what the problem is that you've hit a wall and you don't know how to get around it or get over it. And that would be something that I would be happy to help you try and get through that barrier that you're hitting, or anybody else here I'm sure would also be in that same category of trying to help you get through it. And but you've hit a point and went, oh man, I don't know where to go from here. And I think that's the situation that you're stuck in. I'm talking about the people who hit that wall and go, oh well, this is good enough, and just stop. And that's a different matter.
Well, I think my stumbling point is the fact that, first of all, I've got too many activities on my mind. You can see I'm out in the wilderness building bridges and stuff like that. So I've got way more things going on that I need. Second of all, I'm not ever going to try to do this for money. I think most of us have already resigned ourselves to that. And it just doesn't clicking for me. It's like, some people sing. I can't sing. I don't carry a tune in a bucket. I've never been a musical background, so I don't have a lot of the background stuff that would be nice to have as a caller. And I've got callers here that would like to try to mentor me, but I just haven't got the desire or the drive to do it. So I just gave up. And now I'm sitting here just one of the pool. And I do have one more thing, John. You talked about finding out what the dancers like to do. There's caller Facebook pages and newbie Facebook pages and all sorts of stuff. Is there just a dancer Facebook page that they talk about dancing, or what they like or what they don't like about dancing? I mean, that would be the thing to get into. If you could find a page like that you could get into, you could invite those people to come and air their pluses and negatives to the crew and see if maybe you can draw something from them and try to figure out maybe there's just something uniform that you can fix.
That's a good idea, John. There are some dancer things, but I only see ones where they're just advertising their dances or telling what a wonderful time they've had, not particularly talking about what they like or don't like.
Well, there might be a Facebook page out there that people are grousing about what they didn't like or what they do like or why they are or why they aren't dancing. It might be, I don't know. Just
your job, plural, all of you, try to find that dancer page where they discuss what they like and don't. Let me know, and we'll sort of dig in there. Gerhard, you've got your hand up. Good to hear from Germany.
Hi. I don't know, well, let me start this way. I don't know how it is in other parts of the world, but what I'm criticizing for a long time is that there is, we have caller schools, we have the clubs, and we have single callers. And there is, the organizations never organize something like mentorship. So if you are wannabe caller, you're sitting there and say, okay, I learn a singing call and I get some equipment and maybe I go to a caller school. But then after the caller school, you are alone. Before the caller school, you're alone. And who helps you to find a mentor? I mean, I think somebody mentioned that she has to go 2 hours to have it, and that's true for many people. And so find a mentor, and then find a place to call if you, and not that one tip per month or even per week. That's not enough. So you have to have mic time, you have to have practice and everything. And there is no one organizing it. This is just happening by accident, and maybe it's a good accident. So somebody helps you, you find somebody. I've talked to some callers where I had a great mentor. He helped me, and I developed very much with it, and have found others like me who have never had a mentor, who were on their own and have to develop somehow. And what I would wish is that there is an organized way to become a caller. So the first step is, okay, I have some interest, maybe because I like singing, because I have a feel for choreography, but everything else is, but then the next steps, what is it? The caller school, and I think, Dan, you mentioned it in the early time of these sessions, it was criticized a lot by newbies that, it's too difficult and things like that. And there was some response to that, but still this is true. And I'm missing some organized way in our activity to become a caller, and wish to really recruit new callers. I think if I'm looking around, and I'm not stepping on anybody's toe, but we are all not 20. And so we need more younger callers that will refresh the activity. And so my plea would be organize something that will we end up with newer callers and help them to become good callers. And on the way, Jeremy, I agree, they have to learn that they have to work hard. That's, I think we all know that it is true, but they must start and learn what they have to learn, step by step, and until they become sufficient. Sorry for rambling.
No, thank you, Gerhard. That was some good thoughts. Walt or Julie, I guess Walt's the one on screen.
Yeah, I'm still here. I have a question, and then we're going to have to leave you because we have another meeting we have to be in about 5 minutes. Somebody, Daryl, I think it was you, mentioned about newbies, new people, not getting opportunities to call. All right. Is that a widespread thing in the U.S.? And the reason I say in the U.S. is over here, I don't see that problem. We have new callers show up at our dances, show up at wherever, and it's a commonly accepted thing that they're going to get an opportunity to call. Of course, if we have 6 of them walk in, they're not going to get that chance. But 1 or 2, it's the accepted thing at all our clubs that we give them an opportunity. So I guess what I'm asking, is that a big problem in the U.S.?
It's it's a problem, but it shouldn't be. It's a problem for some because they don't, like Jeremy said, they don't progress. and the dancers and the callers here are always willing to put up somebody new as long as they feel that the caller is progressing. It's not easy to progress without having dancers to call to. Any of the ones that I've mentored or taught schools through the years, I've always said, callers call. Yolanda, have you ever heard me say that? Stephen, have you ever heard me say it? Never once, but no, callers call. If you don't have dancers in front of you, you're not going to become a caller, pure and simple. I don't care whose caller school that you go to. Now,
Daryl, can I interrupt you a second? See you later, everybody. We have to go, unfortunately.
Bye,
Bye,
Walt.
Walt and
Thanks.
Julie.
Nice,
Bye.
nice seeing you again, Walt and Julie.
So
We'll see you again, Don.
To continue here, the way that new callers learn to call, one of the ways is they teach new dancers. Now, I know a lot of callers say, new callers have no business teaching new dancers. Well, I'll tell you what, if they can get a square put together where they can get together on a regular basis, that's incentive. They don't want to get up there and look stupid to their new people. So they work. They have to have a reason to work. If they don't, what they do is they get up, they do that same tip week after week, month after month. And yeah, the dancers are going to give up on them. So they're not going anywhere. I'm tired of that. Or they never learn to do anything that gets them back to the corner. They get mentored by one of those. Just call anything that you want to, and then all you got to do is this, and you'll be back to the corner. They don't speak the language. They don't understand the mechanics of what we do. They don't have a good place to start. And that's all I'm talking about. A good mentor should know the very, very basics of what we do. No, don't tell them, say, do what I do. Heck, you don't even know what you do, most of you. You just get up and do it because you've done it for the last 30, 40, 50 years. No, I think it would be, now, how you would set it up, where you would start with it, I don't think you can leave an open forum. I think you'd have to have, I'd say maybe, Jeremy, some of the accredited caller coaches, and we could butt heads on air like this about how to start, how it should start, and then you could open it up for conversation. But no, I think that's probably one of the most important things that we can do, especially now after this pandemic. Not that we had more callers than we knew what to do with before the pandemic. In relative terms, I'd say we've lost the callers in the activity at least as fast, if not faster, than we've lost the dancers. So that's just another one of those things that I think we need to take control of it some way. And you have a forum here that you can do that. And as far as mentors, Zoom is a fantastic way to mentor somebody that isn't within 100 miles of somebody that they can see on a regular basis. Okay?
When I was starting out, I was hoping for a mentor, somebody to take me under wing and say, this guy's got potential. I'm going to see if I can help him. Maybe it's because I had facial hair at the time, and 55 years ago, that wasn't an in thing. But nobody did that, and I went out and I asked people that I wanted questions, and I called them mentors because they gave me good answers if I was bold enough to ask them. One of the things that I really got a lot out of, and I suggest you caller coaches might consider doing this, but the first caller school I went to, after I'd been playing around with it for about 5 years, was Jim Mayo, and I consider him my mentor. And at the end of Jim's school, and this was a once a week for many weeks, but any kind of school this works for, he said, one of the things you get by being a part of my school is you get my phone number. And if you ever have questions or comments or something, use that phone number and call me. It's good forever. I don't think many or any others in that group took advantage of it, but I did. And as a result, Jim and I got to be good friends, and I learned an awful lot just by calling and asking questions. So by making yourself, if you're serious about continuing education for these newbies, make yourself available to them. It meant a lot to me. It helped me a lot. Another thing that you guys were talking about is, do what I do, but I don't know how to tell you how to do it. I asked Jim once, how come when I ask people how to do it, or I tell somebody I do this and they say, well, if it works for you, do it. Or I'll say, how do you do that? And they say, well, you just do it. And I asked Jim Mayo, how come when I ask you how to do something, you can tell me how to do it, whereas others can't? He says, because they're naturals and I wasn't. And if I could teach this dummy, pointing to himself, he says, I can teach anybody. And he was able to explain things to me that worked. It was a great experience. Did I see another hand up?
Steven's got his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Go for it, Stephen.
Yeah, as one of Daryl's, the ones that he's mentoring on his Zoom meetings, I thoroughly enjoy it. I've learned so much from it. And my situation right now, I can't get out and call, but I'm looking forward to when I am able to. And I've learned so much over the last year that it's ridiculous. As I tell people, I've been dabbling with calling for 40 years, but you compress it all into 1 year, it's less than a year. One of the places I did learn a lot on calling is when I actually did classes for a middle school class. I learned a lot there preparing for the class each time. But I've learned, if I knew what I've learned from Daryl then, oh, wow. But yeah, it's been really good. And I'm thanking him for it.
Yolanda?
I'm also in Daryl's group, and you're in it for a couple of weeks, and all of a sudden you go, so that's what it is, and then you go back to your old notes and your old sessions, and then it's like, okay, now this makes sense. And I was lucky enough when we were all on Zoom for a while there, that I would get a guest tip on one of Walt's and Julie's session, and I got an opportunity to be a guest caller in somebody else's Zoom session. And so for the first time, it was like, oh, so this is what it's like not to have one tip every couple of weeks. And you make a mistake and you learn from it, and then it goes, oh, okay, so then I apply it to this and this and this, and then you have a step forward. But you need that mic time in order to do that, and then you also need time to be able to just to think about things and then go, okay, so now that I can apply this, now I can take it to the next step. In the beginning it was overwhelming because there was so much information, but these Zoom sessions gave me an opportunity that I otherwise wouldn't have had, because I would have only had caller school once every 2 years, and I would have had to drive 2 days to get there and 2 days back. So, this has given me an opportunity to listen to different callers, different perspectives, and somebody will say something and I go, okay, now this makes sense.
Thanks. Clark Baker has left, but he's usually the one that reminds me that we're on the hour again. We're 3 minutes after. Let me make the official ending of this session. I've talked about we're going to be intermittent now, but boy, you guys have given me a lot of ideas of people to contact for for future sessions. So hopefully, possibly it won't be that intermittent. I want to thank you guys for participating today. for participating. Many of you week after week after week after week after. I got some good ideas here. There was something else I was going to say. I really want to thank you, Dan, for co-hosting this. And yeah, and and for doing a lot of the emceeing today, where I kept forgetting to see hands were up. So if any of you guys think of things that you want to talk about that you think you can share good stuff aside from the ideas we have here, Jeremy, I know you've done only one session for us, but you've got lots of knowledge, and if you want to contribute to more stuff, we'd love to have you. I also realized that somebody had suggested they'd like to talk to us about progressive squares, and I've got to admit I can't remember if it was Joe or Hal. It was Joe. Sometime we'll have you do that too, because that's something I've enjoyed seeing crowds enjoy doing, and never quite taken the time to figure out what the total, I figured I should be able to apply mental images to that, but haven't been able to. Anyway, before we hear from Chris and continue on, any other closing comments? Dan, have you got some?
I think let's just carry on. I think the conversation is kind of cool.
I think I'd like to congratulate both of you for carrying on for 2.5 years, because I tell you, we did the class series also, and we did that, once, and we managed to make it through about, I don't know, 35 sessions or so, and then we were done. We were like, we're done with this now. And so we hung it up pretty early on. So I want to congratulate you guys for continuing the idea and keep continuing to move with it.
Thank you, Jeremy. One of the differences in our format versus yours was that you had people do a 1-hour presentation and then a monitored conversation through TED at the end, whereas we try to keep it to a half-hour presentation and lots of other conversation. That's again why I've thought of it as a social group lately. But and I'd like to say, even though you guys may have thought of it before we did, I think we did one presentation before your first one.
You did. You were faster out of the gate. Definitely a more relaxed format and good. Still, definitely. It was definitely a slightly different animal. So maybe that's why you were able to keep going, and we were kind of like burnt.
Well, we know the burnt feeling, and that's why we're thinking of going intermittent at this point. It's a good time to, but appreciate your thoughts on this and your joining us today. Chris, you got your hand up for a long time.
Well, I was just going to say thank you guys for running this. And one of the things that a couple people said, I think, I think you just said it just now yourself, is that it's a very social thing. And I know I've really enjoyed getting to talk to people from all over the world on these, and that's been enlightening and a lot of fun. And so I had a suggestion for when you don't have a topic, because I know it's hard to keep coming up with topics and get people booked to come and do a presentation and everything. On weeks when you can't think of anything, or you can't get anybody or whatever, I think it might be fun, or at least on some of those weeks, to just have it be a totally open forum with no presenter. Just call it like Callers Coffee or something, and just open it up, see who shows up. And that's also, aside from just socializing, that's also a way that people can generate more ideas and talk more about things that they wish. That I guess the important thing there would be for somebody to write down, but probably a lot of ideas will pop up there. that people have about things they'd like to hear more about. And then, of course, if you were doing that, somebody, and when I say you, I mean anybody, you can, just opening the room up is really all that's needed. And somebody could sometimes run contaminations for people who wanted to try things out or see things on there. And so just sort of a free for all. And it'd be interesting to see if people show up and how regularly they do. But if they knew that at 11 o'clock on Saturday, you could pop into this place and there might be some people hanging out there, that in itself might be a fun idea.
This was sort of an open forum today, and it's been going well, but it took some kickstarting to get it moving. I think was it Gerhard that said, if you present a topic to kickstart it with, it might work better. I don't know. Interesting. Joe, you've got your hand up, and then Hal after that.
Yeah, on the mentoring side, well, even before that, there's a lot of you that don't say a whole lot, and I think part of it is because you're afraid of saying something that someone else might think is, oh, that's goofy. Why would you do that, or why do you do it that way? But I guess my advice is, speak your mind, say what you do. You know, if it works for you, it works for you. It could work for us. So, you know, the sharing thing is really very valuable to me.
Oh, you know, another point is that if you were doing the free for all, then you don't have to record that. That might make some people more comfortable about asking dumb questions.
Good point.
I like to think of this as a closed group, as a safe group. That's the word I'm thinking of, and you can speak your mind. Joe probably,
Yeah.
I mean, Chris probably has a good idea by saying don't
Yeah.
record it, but
that may be an idea, but I've thought about that too. Like when I've done presentations, I've gone back and thought, oh shoot, this is going to be on YouTube now, and someone's out there going to say you're dumb. You know, but you know what? I've kind of got over that. I've been told to retire, and I've retired a lot of times, but it hasn't taken. It's like quitting smoking. You have to try a lot of times. Anyhow, with the coaching thing or the mentoring, back in the day, like I was from around the Albany, New York area, we had callers falling out of the woodwork everywhere. It was quite competitive. So we didn't, even our caller meetings, we didn't share a lot, unfortunately. So it took a lot more back then. But going along with that, when I moved into Canada, we have greater distances to go, and we have fewer callers. And of course, I kept doing caller schools and everything. Eventually, I got two different associations in Ontario to work with me. One was the Toronto district area, and one was the Ottawa area, or Eastern Ontario. And what we did is I would do the caller school, and I had fantastic dancer cooperation for coming out and being guinea pigs and dancing. Some of them audited the course as dancers. And what happened was the two sections of the country would have regular monthly new caller dances. They sponsored them, they paid the whole works. I emceed most of them. And we would have callers, you know, from the caller schools coming out, getting a chance to call several times a week, a month at least. And from that, we got loads of people in the Toronto district area calling for the Gay Triangle Squares, the gay club, for over 30 years. I started many of those callers, and there's bunches of them, and it's great because their club, they don't lack for callers. Anytime a caller gets sick or can't make the dance, there's 5 or 6 other callers in the room, and they'll step up and do it, and they're given a chance to call left, right, and center, which is really good. From that, we got the Gay Callers Association caller school going. I started that way back. Oh Lord, I can't remember when, but we started that, and now look what it's grown to. You know, and you can go to those and get a lot. You get a lot of mic time, and they're really great. So, but you've got to do your research, you know, as a newbie, and find out what caller school gives you a lot of mic time. Like Daryl says, keep it simple. The first steps are call, do a singing call, do Mary Had a Little Lamb, do whatever, and get on the microphone. So anyhow, that's my 2 cents worth.
We're going to hear next from Hal and then from Gerhard, but I do want to throw in something as far as getting time to practice and the like. Dan made me aware of something way back when, that he went to a group that Rich Reel was running on just letting newbies get together and call. Was it weekly, Dan? And we had actually
monthly, but yeah.
We had session 43, April 10th, 2021. Rich Reel did one of the presentations here on how to organize one of those things and why, and giving newbies a chance to get together and practice, and I guess critique in a safe place. So if you're interested in some ideas on that, that's something to go back and reference. So where were we? Hal, Hal, go ahead.
This session has morphed into a exclusive topic on new callers. But I wanted to just throw out a topic for future consideration that is not on new callers.
Please.
I have a real problem, and I'm just familiar with Colorado. And the problem is, as a guest caller, when I got to go out to a club, I have people who can't dance the most basic, and let's talk about mainstream calls. I'm not talking about exotic, all position stuff. Let me give you 2 examples. When I go out as a guest caller and I try to call a spin the top without a swing through in front of it, the floor collapses, and I have to teach it. The ladies don't know how to move up. When I call a turn through as a guest caller, half the floor just stands there like they've never heard the call before. Okay, so we have some really basic calls that we expect people to do that they can't do. Maybe you don't have this experience, but it's very frustrating to me because I shouldn't have to teach a spin the top or a turn through as a guest caller. And my frustration is not with the dancers, it's with obviously the other callers who are not calling spin the top without a swing through in front of it or a turn through. Okay, so we're dumbing down the activity by neglect. And this is just a huge problem for us. So we have 3 callers in Colorado Springs here where I am. And the 3 of us talked about this and put together a must call list. And all 3 of us agreed we would call all the calls on this must call list in order to fight against this problem that we're having. And so turn through and spin the top without a swing through in front of it. In fact, and I'll be quiet after this. So I went to the state festival this year, and I was in, I was there all days that it was there. And I kept track to see how many times in the state festival did I see a spin the top without a swing through in front of it. And the answer was 0. I saw none. And then I looked for how many times did I see a turn through. The answer was 0. I got none. This is in like 2 days of dancing with a huge variety of callers. So I think this is just a huge problem. And I don't know if it's your problem, but it's certainly my problem. So I'll be quiet on that.
It's good observation, Hal. I'm just wondering, at a festival, I might be tempted to only call what I know they can dance. But in a home club or a regular thing, you should be able to work them into other things.
What's really funny is from from standard couples, spin the top turn through courtesy turn is just beautiful.
Very true. Gerhard, you've been waiting patiently.
Well, I would like to have 2 points. One of I would take the opportunity to really congratulate you two on this 100th session. I was very active in that in the first year, but unfortunately I have a little job on Saturday afternoons. I'm retired, but there's some for the local Chamber of Commerce. I'm doing some things. So and that's unfortunately it's on Saturday afternoons, which is here now, and it's on 4 and then 5 is the session. And I most times I don't make it. I try to follow up some on YouTube, but it's not the same experience as it is being live and well, sitting before YouTube and it's, I would have said this and that, but you can't. Is well, frustrating. So I didn't follow all of the sessions, but now and then I try to be there, and like today, I'm glad to be there. The second thing is you mentioned widening the crowd a little, inviting maybe wannabe callers or something like that. So not only advertising at a newbies callers, but also maybe on some other forums that where experienced dancers exchange and so on. And I really would second that as another, at least give it a try to find out whether we, and if really people show up, then this is the ideal forum to get them started, to give them ideas, to understand what they can do next. Well, they have to work themselves, but they need to get ways to go forward. And I think this would be ideal to do that. So I encourage you to follow that way, maybe. Thanks.
Thank you, Gerhard. Jeremy, a general comment, but I've noticed that your class group, Jeremy, always had a lot more attendees than we have. And Mel's ASH group, Australian Sensible Hour, also has a lot more attendees than we have. Maybe we picked the wrong. Actually, you guys were in this time slot, and we slipped into it as soon as you vacated it, Jeremy. Interesting kind of thing, but again, I've really enjoyed it.
Well, now much like Hal, I had an idea for a topic as well, and I just wanted to spit it out real quick. You know, a lot of us do things that we consider to be odd or different than other callers, and I'd like to hear what everybody's odd and different thing is, so that we can discuss it and maybe you know, spread some cool things around. You know, that's you know, I have a particular get out that I use that every time I use it, everybody goes, wow, that was really, really cool. And, you know, that's just one of those things that it's like, you know, if more people were using it, maybe it wouldn't be so cool anymore. But, you know, it's one of those things that it's like, you know, maybe if you sprinkle it around a little bit, maybe some of us could get some use out of things like that.
Jeremy, you want to lead a session on that next week? We have an open slot.
Not at all.
So I do notice that Chris has his hand up.
Yeah.
Back to what Hal was saying about turn through and spin the top. Of course, there's always been, well, at least as long as I've been doing it, which is not as long as some people, but from my perspective, there's always been neglected calls that people seem to have forgotten, or that call, and it's, you know, like you say, callers are just not calling them, and even if they're teaching them once, they might just you know, perfunctorily run through it and then never come back to it. The poster child for that, as you'll remember, for a while was Crossfire, and then Caller Lab had the emphasis calls program going for a little while, which was kind of like quarterly selections, except they were calls that were already on the list. And but on those two calls in particular, turn through is one that I call it all the time. But if I go places, you know, that are not the clubs I normally call for, yeah, that's one that people, again, that's on the list of ones that just don't get called enough because people are like, what's a turn through? Is that challenge thing or what? And spin the top, of course. One suggestion would be to drop the call, spin the top. Oh, wait, we already did that. SSD doesn't have spin the top because Jerry Story said, oh, I never call spin the top. We just don't do that around where I live. So I just thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, I sometimes see problems with spin the top too. But mostly it's from people that I think the spin the top problems I've been seeing are just maybe from COVID. But yeah, I see those two also.
But the problem with turn through is it leaves you in a half sashayed position, and oh my God, what do you do there?
Well, I mean, one of the most classic resolves I remember when I was learning that
swing through, turn through.
Yeah, well, yeah, the swing through, turn through, Alaman left. I used to do that all the time, and now I never hear that.
Yeah, turn through is also handy to get half sashayed people and make them normal, but that's another problem.
Yeah, do people use it in singing calls still, or has it for some reason fallen out of favor there?
I use turn through in singing calls all the time. I love the case where you get the ladies in the middle and the men are behind them, and you do the ladies turn through back to a men slide through and everybody promenade. So I typically would do like a clover leaf, ladies turn through and back to a man slide through and everybody promenade. It's a really nice singing call. Get it?
Yeah, one of my cliches in well, patter is you know, girls turn through, star through, boys trade, and some couples thing.
As a new caller, I use turn through all the time.
It's nice to do a courtesy turn after the turn through. In fact, they should give it a name like turn and
left through. Yeah, that's what Jeremy was doing. Yeah.
That was actually on a list for a while, and then people said, well, you don't need it because you can just call it through, but then nobody calls it through.
Except those of us that remember the call, and then we call it and the dancers go, oh, that's cool.
You probably don't remember because it didn't get any use anywhere, but Jay King wrote a call called TNT. Turn through, centers turn through and the others you turn back. Turn it, and it was, you know, from a trade by formation, and it got you all moving again. But I didn't make it, as 3,000 others didn't also. Dan, you're in the upper left-hand corner, but you don't have your hand up.
No, a number of thoughts, but whoop. Sorry, Keith, go again.
I said you're chuckling.
Yes.
That's why I have to mute, because I'll just sit here and laugh all day, you know.
And there were a couple of things that I knew I was going to bring up later and then didn't, but going back to the discussion about the difficulty calling things, or, you know, having to call off a limited list when you were at a festival or what have you. Isn't this related to the rush to plus or rush to challenge in the Bay Area, where we don't explore the list completely? We say, oh, SSD is simple and doesn't give us enough material to work with, and then we call something which it involves a crossfold and the floor disappears. So in general, kind of backing off and trying to do more interesting stuff with the lower levels. And yes, I hate that word for all the reasons that Color Lab advises against it. And that we can be doing a lot more. Also, Don and I will occasionally exchange videos, and I definitely don't want to dish on anybody who is calling in those videos, because the dancers are clearly enjoying themselves. but where there's a lot of stop and go dancing. And that's a very common thing, and especially a very common thing when you get up to challenge. And I'm a fan of kind of going simpler and more into the dancing side of things. And I don't know, maybe there's room for discussion there about, maybe we've already had the discussion there about how traditional squares and contras keep things flowing, and modern Western has a lot of jerkiness in it. Sorry, I rambled.
Yes, there's a lot of jerks.
Well, so in challenge, there's a certain amount of stop and go expected, just because, you know, if you call challenge in a dance format where everybody's moving constantly the entire time, not only is that in itself considered hard, but if you then throw in anything complicated and don't give them time to think, then they're guaranteed to break down. So I mean, it's a different animal once you get up to that level. But I agree, you know, that we should be doing more with the lower, with the earlier programs. Let's put it that way. You know, one of the things, you know, again, you talk about spin the top, and again, me talking about stuff that I do that's different. You know, how many times have you heard spin the top followed by a right and left through? Occasionally you'll hear spin the top followed by a slide through. Well, I thought, well, wouldn't it be interesting if that slide through were not something that we expected to get out of it? So if you have boy, girl waves, and you call spin the top followed by a slide through, you end up with tandem couples instead of facing couples, and it works out very nicely, very easily. The dancers just do it. They have no idea what they just did, but it's really cool and different.
Just to jump in on the challenge thing, yeah, that is just like Jeremy says. If you're telling them to do something really complicated, they're going to have to stop and think about it anyway. You can do a lot of flowing stuff, but there's quite a lot of stuff where, and also just to say the name of the call and then for them to digest it. Just you know, you can't really say, you know, spin your top in your interlock phantom column once removed shakedown, you know, or something, and expect you know, they're going to be processed. You're not going to get the words out anyway, and you know, yeah, they need time on some things. And you also just, I mean, if the call names are that long, there's going to be stop and go pretty much just so you can say the name of the call.
Say it sooner, Chris. Give them enough.
Yeah.
Mind.
Well,
Daryl?
Daryl?
Oh, go ahead, Joe.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say that challenge stuff, if you combine concepts and everything else, you have sentences that are way too long to pre-cue them. But there's ways around all of that. You know, I mean, you can do, you know, finally tandem, once removed, stingy, spin the top or something. I mean, by the time you've said it, the dancers are just standing there staring at you.
The standard joke for a long time was this is all one call, and you can't start moving until you hear the end of it. Right? Revert the loop and tag chain through, scatter, cross reactivate to a diamond, and turn and plenty, but turn to star 3/4 the wave. You can't even actually parse that until the last phrase, the wave.
Daryl, go ahead.
My favorite call is scoot fan relay the deucey on a double bias, crisscross the axle and spread your neighbor's gears. Okay? Now,
is that a two couple or
with that said,
is that for two couple dancing?
It really bothers me a lot if I am going to go call a festival and the floor can't do that. A very dear friend of mine, Mr. Marshall Flippo again, always said, find out what they can do and call it. And that's a caller's job. It is. I am so sick and tired. I'm sorry, gang, but I'm so sick and tired of that list telling us what we can and can't call, how we can and can't call it. Job of a caller. It's no wonder the activity is where it's at today. It's just because of attitude like that from the callers, not from the dancers. And the only dancers that we're retaining are the ones that we can convince That's the right way to do it. They'll like it like that, and they're here. And the ones that were running out of the activity are the ones that are going to do swing through, spin the top, right and left through. If they're going to touch quarter, it's going to be follow with the scoot back with the boys going in. You've got all this other tremendous material, and there's nothing wrong with using it to select groups. But the important group is down here where the numbers were. That pyramid that we used to have of dancers is turned upside down.
And that's see, and what Daryl's talking about, of course, is the SSD program.
Well, okay, I like SSD. I like the concept of SSD. Personally, I can't see a whole lot of difference between that and the basic program.
The difference is people will do SSD, people won't do basic.
It's a name. That's all it is. It's a name.
They got marketed a whole lot better than basic did.
I agree, but we've been through these. It still remains to be seen if that is going to survive and create anything. The idea of the SSD, Jeremy, is that you never move from that. It's a standalone program. But every caller that I know is still that's already calling and has mainstream and plus groups is going to use that as an entry level to go on to something else, which was not the idea behind the SSD. So we'll see where that goes. Like I say, the concept, I'm in 100% agreement with it. I want to see the implementation of it work, okay? But what I'm talking about here is an attitude. It's an attitude of the callers that we have. And if we don't get past that, we're not going to rebuild this activity. I'm sorry, but that's my impression. I'm fairly new to this game, but I've seen it come from what I'm talking about into what it is now. And I'm tired of the tail wagging the dog. I'm flat out tired of it. We need to get back to SSD, social dancing, dancing for social, and not worry about the fact that they can't spin the top twice in a row.
We should call, I thought SSD stood for Save Square Dancing. It's the attempt. Yeah, we should run some classes for challenge callers, how to call to beginner groups.
I don't think they would. I don't think they would like it. Most of them.
Well, you know what? I had that classic caller and point here would be Barry Clasper. He came to me and said, Joe, he said, I want to call more dances and whatnot, but I don't know what the mainstream dancers mind works like. So he came to he came to several of my caller schools, and look where he is now. He can call any dance you want, right up through C4, because he had the opportunity, because he cared. Something along with what Daryl has been saying, I agree 100% with Daryl. SSD is a good idea, but it's the same as the Rush to Plus. It's 12. You're saying 12 weeks? I'm sorry, but I've caught a long time. I can't do a good job at that program in 12 weeks. It just won't. I don't have perfect dancers. I don't have young minds to work with. I have old folks, and I have some folks that are younger. They don't catch on. They just don't get the idea. I can't kick them out the door. I've got to call to the floor. So I'm teaching to those levels. So SSD to me looks like, you want more dancers? Well, get them in the first round to start with. Do it up until Christmas or so. Then if you want to start again in January, great. But make sure you got a place for them to dance no matter what. They got to dance. When you do beginner classes, you need beginner dances where they come and do a whole night of what they know, not new stuff. Have fun. It's social. Two really quick things. If I do a session on progressive squares, realize that my method is dirt simple. It is so simple. Like what? Now the problem is you got to have at least 4 squares. You know, it's not a two couple thing. Um, Along with new callers, trying to get new callers out, we have to deal with the partner. The partner says, "Oh, you're not going to become a caller. I want a square dance. Forget it." And we lose some really possibly good callers that way. But that's the way it goes. Um, Look, as far as what works, look at old time square dancing in the Calgary area. They dance. They fill up. They sell out. They sell tickets $25 a person for an old time square dance, and they sell out. Then they have live music, and I'm looking at that as how am I going to do it? How many of you, as experienced callers, go out to anything else other than a regular square dance? And even if you do, have you gone to your neighbor's square dance? You got to get out there yourselves. Um, so like Daryl, we rant a lot because we care.
I think the problem with the callers doing SSD as a stepping stone to
Stephen, I see you.
is that they want that it's their existing clubs that they want to get the people into, or maybe the existing clubs are the ones who are paying for these halls for this SSD, and they of course they don't want to change their level to drop down to SSD because they've spent quite a few years getting to plus or whatever. The SSD to me is really something that's for people to start new clubs. I think that's where the confusion comes in.
Yeah, anybody treating SSD as a stepping stone is doing it wrong. That's not SSD. All you're doing is using a list, and that is not SSD. SSD needs to be taught as a landing pad. It's the first landing pad. You climb this little tiny flight of stairs. You get to this landing pad, and you can stay there as long as you want. And you have people go, "Hey, look, there's another flight of stairs up there," but you don't have to go. You don't have to go if you don't want to. If you want to, go for it. But it's up there, but don't worry about it if you don't want to. You can just stay here.
Right. Well, and that's the other key thing about SSD. It doesn't work unless there's regular dancing. For once they finish, they have to be able to go places and dance. You have to have SSD dances. That's like that to me. That's the main thing about it.
Any program works if you've got callers that can entertain people at that level. And that's what we're trying to do here, is help people learn to entertain better, not to be able to add to their vocabulary. Stephen,
the other problem with SSD is that nobody seems to agree on the all position dancing element of it. Here's a bunch of calls. Do they need to be able to do these calls from every possible position, backwards and forwards and whatever, or do they just need to do them from some positions, or
just backwards?
What are you going to do there?
Well, all that is stated in the documentation is basically it's supposed to be standard position only. Now, standard position is probably a bit wider than what people think standard position is, but it's supposed to be standard position only, and then you're not supposed to go beyond that for the SSD program. Now, you sprinkle it in at the dances, but you don't overwhelm them with it. And that's what Daryl was talking about. Is you don't need to be able to. Well, spin the top is one that's actually pretty open as far as what standard position is, but for some of the other calls, the standard position is pretty limited, as far as what you can.
Spin the top's not on the list, right?
It's all written out.
Yeah, but spin the top isn't on the list, right?
It's not on the list.
You were just using it as an example. Yeah.
As an example, right?
Stephen, rather, you've been waiting patiently. Go for it.
One of the things I've noticed, observed over the years, all the way back to when I first took lessons, is the rush to push people to the next level and stuff like that. When I took basic mainstream lessons in 1981, almost as soon as we finished the class, they were asking us to go on into plus. And I was ready for it, but I know a lot of people who weren't ready to go into plus. And I see that still today where callers try to go on to the next level and the dancers aren't really ready for it. They're not proficient enough at the level that they're at to go on into the next level. There's still more that they can learn and stuff. After I graduated plus, I went to a plus dance where this square that I got into, this lady's husband broke the square down like 3 times. I finally broke the square down with a mistake towards the end. And as we were saying thank you at the end, she made a comment that some people shouldn't be doing plus. And I'm like thinking, yeah, like your husband. But I didn't say anything, but it's things like that where the dancers aren't really ready and people are pushing them.
Unfortunately, a lot of the plus callers, the plus dancers can't dance mainstream, but that's another problem. Bye, Gerhard, if you're still hearing us. I saw you wave. Daryl, you've had your hand up patiently.
Yeah. You might think that I don't like SSD, and that's not true. It's as close to what we did 50 years ago as anything could be. The dancers that we still have in our metropolitan area here, which is fairly small, we still have, I'm going to guess, over 20 clubs. And the base level is mainstream. It's not plus. Now, 80% of any mainstream floor in our area will dance plus. But the entry level is plus program here, or a mainstream program. Now, those are the dancers that I don't recall who was said that they're paying the rent for the hall. They're sponsoring the classes, and they're not about to do it because they're the dancers that instead of doing a swing through, spin the top, right and left through, this is the 80% of them. They want to do a spin the top, swing through, right and left through. Now, they're not going to go, let me finish here. As a standalone program, SSD can and will work. But I am a caller in this area as well as a dozen other fellows, and we're working for people that are already here that are result of what we've had. So it's going to be very, very difficult to sell that here.
You wouldn't want to. Why? I don't understand why you would want to. That's the whole thing. So if you're using the mainstream program as an effective entry level program, then there is no reason for you to be trying SSD. There's absolutely zero reason for it. Just like many of the people in Europe are going, why would we want this? Why do we don't need this? The SSD program is only going to be effective where there either is no square dancing or the entry level is plus which it should not be.
I started a club well over 50 years ago. It took me a year and a half or 2 years to get that club going. Now I haven't had to start one since then. I'm not likely to start one at this stage in my calling experience. As a matter of fact, the calling I'm going to be doing in the future is going to be very, very limited. But none of the other callers are ready to go out and start clubs either. That's not an easy thing. It's one thing to maintain a club if you've got enthusiastic dancers, but it's something else to go out and start I'm never going to have them go into this other group. It's a caller lab program, and caller lab programs go from one to the other. Yeah, standalone, all by itself. The concept, like I say, is very good, and I can see it happening, but not within what we refer to as modern Western square dancing, which is what most of us are involved with. Look around. How many of you do not call anything beyond mainstream? How many of you do not call anything beyond plus? How many of you do not call anything beyond advanced? I don't see any hands going up. You know, the thing of it is, most of you are advanced or challenge callers. So that's the people that you deal with are going to be different than what we're going to expect to have at SSD. And the SSD would be great. I have no doubt, and it will build an activity of its own, not a whole lot different than the traditional square dance that Joe talks about. All right. And yeah, it's good. I just don't see it fitting in with the normal Caller Lab way of doing things. I'm sorry, but that's just the perspective that I have on it. With that, I'll shut up, and I'm probably going to sneak out of here pretty quick. Go fix myself some breakfast.
50 minutes ago, I told you that was okay.
Yeah, no, the SSD program is it's not an end all be all. It's not a fix. It's not a magic pill. It's simply another way to get people interested and keep them interested without burning them out all the way up, going all the way up to plus. And like I said, if you got a working mainstream program, then you don't need it. It's because mainstream is just as good a landing spot as SSD is. It's probably a better landing spot as far as that goes.
It's not working any better than the plus. Mainstream as a base level is not working either. Partly, and this is my belief, it has more to do with the applications of what we're calling. Just the idea that somebody gets upset because the dancers won't do a spin the top. Now, this is an attitude thing. It's not a name thing. Spin the top without preceding with a swing through and finishing with the right and left through. But that's what your SSD is supposed to be, is stuck this way. Already on Facebook, on the SSD, I'm seeing things that are saying, well, we could do this from this position, blah, 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 blah. It ain't going to last if they don't get away from that.
Yeah, and that is absolutely what it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be standard position and
absolutely. And the mentality that we have here fits better into what we had. But no, mainstream is not an answer. It isn't. We maintain mainstream. We have since Plus was established in Caller Lab. I was there when it happened. And it hasn't saved us at all. We thought, boy, it's going to be, they're doing the wrong thing, blah, blah, blah. I said 80% of our floor will dance plus at a mainstream dance. So, it hasn't saved anything. Our numbers have gone down proportionately to the plus areas. What you need to have is one entry program that dances, and then know how to program a good dance. Somebody was saying, well, whoever it was that was upset about this business that they couldn't do the swing through, spin the top right and left through. I think I put on there a good program, basically to me, I didn't write this on the chat. A good program calls everything that everybody can do and then inserts something that nobody can do in the middle of it just to make a floor leveler and to entertain the people. And they're allowed to forget that when they walk out of the hall because they're never going to see it again. That makes a good dance program for everybody, something for everybody during the dance. Expect them or this I did say, it's not up to me to teach somebody else's dancers how to dance. That's just flat out wrong.
I have an off the wall question. I'd just like to get an interesting.
It wasn't your comment that I'm talking about.
No, I know. We're not arguing here. We're just hashing out the details. But I have a question, and it's basically this: if somebody flipped the switch in Caller Lab, and we avoided all the votes and all the rigmarole. If somebody flipped the switch in Caller Lab and said, okay, SSD is now is now what we're calling mainstream, and everything else that's not on the SSD list gets pushed up to plus, we're done. This is what we're doing. Would anybody be upset about that?
Everybody would be.
No. Not would everybody else be upset? Would you be upset about it?
Would I be upset? No, I don't think so. That would work. One entry program. That's
right.
I would go 100% for that, and I don't see any reason why that can't be done. I'd be very surprised. I'd be very surprised if there aren't callers at this point in time discussing that very thing. Now
we already have that. It's called basic, pretty much.
Chris, put your hand up if you want to talk. Jeremy? Yeah, you can't take that to Caller Lab. There'll be the next 3 decades arguing over the
Oh, I know. I'm just asking the hypothetical here, because I don't think there's as many people that would be upset with it as we think. The problem, of course, and Chris just kind of mentioned it. I think you made him mad, but I
think I did, but I'm sorry. I'll apologize.
But I think the problem with basic is there's not enough interesting calls, and a lot of callers don't know how to make basic interesting. SSD kind of solves a bit of that problem and gives them their favorite calls to use off the mainstream program, and that's why. But the idea is basically, and I think this was the ultimate goal of our late colleague Jerry Story, was that he would get this program as the solidified basic level, and then move everything else up. And that was his ultimate goal, though he knew it was a pipe dream to make it happen. And I think that would be an interesting. I think that would solve a lot of issues if we could actually make SSD the basic level program, that the entry level program, and then just shove everything else up to plus and be done with it. I think that would be a big deal, and I think there's a lot of people who would be on board with that. Unfortunately, I think there's just as many people who would complain and gripe and be upset.
I can't find out where to put my electronic hand up, so I use one of the real ones. Let me throw out a thought to you guys, and this would be one of the things that might be happening to make SSD successful. I want to know what you guys think of it. And I think that changing it to the entry level and then everything beyond being plus would counteract this. But I think there are a lot of callers that are going to SSD because they think it's going to help get them going, and that it's going to, callers that just teach mainstream, they want to go on to teach plus too, and then advanced. But if SSD is a separate, as it is, program level by itself, maybe this is helping some of the callers justify not going on and learning more or pushing their dancers more. So maybe it will succeed not because of the dancers and learning fast, but because of the callers accepting it better because of that.
Well, see, and that's one of the biggest things about the program. And I don't want to turn this into a pushing SSD on everybody thing, but one of the things that I see, and I experienced myself after calling SSD for 3 years and teaching it, and going through it for so many years, is it made me a better caller. I started learning how to do things better. I started learning how the basic calls move people and how all these SSD calls could be used. When you limit your list, you start learning how to do these types of things. And Daryl touched on it earlier when he was saying that newer callers teaching a class, people go, oh, no. But I think it's the best thing for them because they have that limited list of calls to use, and it teaches them how to use those calls in a limited fashion so that they can actually learn what the calls do, how they work, and it gives them a better understanding of how to use the calls as they come across them in the lessons.
As a total aside, I find I've frequently, instead of right and left through after a swing through spin the top, I find that dancers can easily do a recycle there, and it gives them a little bit of variety.
Exactly.
Totally off subject.
Well, I mean, but that's an example of how you use calls.
Bye again, Daryl.
Of how you can use calls in different ways and get more out of them with a limited subset.
Yeah.
So anyway, we went down a few different rabbit holes here.
So I see Keith's hand is up.
Oh, all right. But Keith's still
there. I'm actually on. Okay. I think that what we have here is a bunch of stuff that we've covered, but some of it concerning calling and some of it concerning dancing and dance programs. One of the things that's interesting to me is I think SSD is supposed to mean social square dancing. You can stick your thumbs down if it isn't supposed to mean that, but I think it is. And thank you, Dan. I can always count on you. So we have two kinds of square dancers. We have social square dancers and we have hobbyists. The hobbyists want to dance plus and advanced and challenge. They love square dancing. They want to dedicate their lives to it. Well, maybe not that much. But this is the thing. They're in it for as far as they can go, and they love learning new calls. They love solving puzzles. The social square dancers, they want to bop around the floor on Saturday night, swing their gal around, and take her home. By golly, we have something called round dancing if they can't get enough of that. And they should learn how to do it too, because for one thing, it'll give them some timing, and they all of a sudden, and we should learn how to do it, cue it, because it gives us an awareness of, hey, it's got to take so many beats and you've got to be on the beat with your calls and stuff. It's just absolutely critical in round dancing, not so much so in square dancing. That's why you get to stop and go dancing all the time. But also, as far as callers and lists and this, that, and the other thing are concerned, I had a guy come to me from my club. Now, my club isn't my club. I am an employee of the club. And I tried to start a square dance class around here before the pandemic. As a matter of fact, I tried to start one 3 times, actually a class. And of course, what was on the menu? SSD. Because, I'm of the opinion that you're going to get more people. And something, they did me a favor. I told them I was going to charge everybody. And they says, we're not going to come to your class. And Angel, if you're going to charge us, good, thanks. Stay home because I don't want you polluting my class with your, then you need to learn mainstream and you need to learn, because I want to make a group that wants to do SSD. Even if they use a different color than me eventually, I don't care. I think, I did something for square dancing and that's good for me. But it just, we live in such an isolated area, it doesn't work. So the club president came to me last week and he says, oh, I want to start a class. What do you think about doing that? And I says, since there's a limited number of callers here, we could probably handle it to where we could, intercommunicate and keep a class going. But let me ask you this, what product do you want to sell? Well, he gave me a dumb look. And this is the deal. This is the deal with SSD. When Buddy Weaver talks about SSD, he talks about, we at Caller Lab went out and we asked a marketing consultant about our square dancing and what he thought about it. I think you guys have heard this before. most of you in the room here. And he told us you don't even have a product, because it takes you 12 months to teach it, and they can't miss classes, and it's a big problem if they go on vacation, especially like to Europe or something like that. So, that's my question. What product? You want them to learn how to dance plus? And well, I just want them to learn how to square dance. Well, they have this SSD program, but you guys don't dance it, and you're probably not going to want to. I said, I think you should talk to your board and figure out what you want to do, and then come and talk to the callers and see if you can get anybody to support it. And he doesn't have to go very far, because it's really only about 1 square every week. And we live in an isolated area. I'd love to have you guys drop in and take the mic, and say, well, we'll pay you a bunch of money just to call the weekend dance. But the week's dance, but we couldn't even do that. It just kind of runs the way it does. And it just kind of limps along, and it's going to be dead in 2 or 3 more years if they don't hold the class. And I think we've got about 2 or 3 people in the group that really understand that. But I don't think they're going to survive unless they do something like SSD anyway. That's my 2 cents worth on calling and dancing that I heard about today.
Keith, one of the things you said near the beginning sort of opened a light for me, that I thought it was one of the best comments I've heard all in the last hour, is that SSD is a separate group of social dancing versus hobby dancing. And that distinction, I think that's a great distinction right there. And if
that,
people,
and the dancers have to decide who they want to be.
Yeah.
And until you get some square dancing in them, they're not going to know. And an established club only has really one choice. They're not going to want to give up anything they know. So, you really got to go off and start a separate group. And
that's the trick right there. You either have to convince the hobbyists that you already have that they want to do social square dancing in order to supply them more hobbyists, or you have to start anew and just cater to the social people, and then finger pick the ones that want to do more. The problem is, and I think this is where Dan had a bad experience with SSD, is that you're trying to sell SSD to a bunch of hobbyists and they don't want it. They're not going to do it. They're not going to support it, and they're going to try and turn it into what they want.
It's like trying to divide one by
that
zero.
won't work.
Yeah. You'll never get there.
let me tell you about a success story. No, actually, a non-success story. For years and years, I believed in the SSD concept, only much more abbreviated. And I've got a 4-week program that I've created and a 10-week program I've created. 25 years ago, I moved to a laboratory, to the island of Martha's Vineyard, where there was no Western square dancing, no square dancers, no angels to pollute people's minds of what it should all be about. And there were some contra dancers and a contra dance caller and a live band. It's still here, but and I've worked with them on party nights. But I thought, I've got the perfect place to start the laboratory, to start a 4-week program and have the few squares I get so excited about it. And I wanted still the look and feel of Western square dancing without all the calls necessary, just still have the formations and variety and singing calls. And I tried many times, and in the back of my mind, I think I still might try. Part of the problem is finding a venue that I can afford for the first 10 years before the group builds up by the dancers selling each other on it. Part of it is, as I like to tell people, I'm a good caller and a good teacher and a terrible organizer. I've had several attempts and just it hasn't worked. But boy, I still regret having not been able to, for 25 years, to, God, it's almost 26 now, to follow through on this perfect laboratory that I've got here. And it's a, you know, year-round population of 18 to 20,000 in the 6 towns that in the off season need to have some kind of diversion other than drinking to get through the winter and the non-tourist season. Any hints on finding the right venue? No, I'm not going to build my own barn.
Yeah, we have some here that did.
As I say, I hate to admit, but it's a non-success story that for 25 years I've been thinking, boy, I could show the world, and I just haven't been able to do it.
You need some competition, Don. If you can find me a place down there for free, I'll come down there and push your buttons there and get you off the chair.
Housing is difficult. It's here. You may have heard that in the national news the last month or so.
You got a basement?
Yes,
Okay.
it's clutter, storage clutter area. It's not a big enough spot to dance in. When we
actually gotten harder to find venues since COVID.
When we first moved into this house, the previous owner had put up a tent platform in the backyard. I finally tore it down because it was too dangerous to stand on, but it would hold a 1 square nicely. And in fact, one of the areas on the island has a lot of small cottages, and there are Western square dancers that summer there from a club that I used to call for regularly in the Boston area. And I did have them in the backyard dancing on the tent platform once, but I just like to make believe they really aren't around as far as being angels interfering. Some of them moved out here full time, but anyway, I hate to report on a non-success story that I was hoping would be a success story 25 and 24 and 23 and 22 years ago. I've tried in senior citizens. I've tried to get the high school involved. I've tried all sorts of things, and it's a venue problem.
So I think we've kind of dragged out the conversation here long enough that this isn't a topic for this week. But one of the things that we had earlier was talking about what gets new callers who are actually going to put the focus into it to become callers interested in how we become callers. And right now we get new callers out of the people who are interested in the puzzle solving and becoming the challenge callers, which is, I think, ties into the same conversation we're having. Because we're really talking about rebooting square dancing as something other than what the social scene has become now. And interesting conversation to say, what do people get out of callers? Why would you become a caller? Because it's not a cheap hobby, and it's one with an increasingly smaller audience. And this USDA marketing square dancing thing, when is that occurring? What's the time on that?
In 45 minutes.
Okay. Keith, your hands up, go.
Yeah, the one thing that I wanted to say is we need probably to develop fewer callers and more dance leaders. Yeah, that can maybe call, but their basic function is to get the dance and the dancers and the venues and all that other stuff together. That's what I feel sometimes, especially in my area where it's limited and people seem to have limited experience with this stuff is, geez, do I really need to be a caller, or do I need to be more of a dance leader and step back and let somebody else do the calling? Yeah, that'll probably help things a lot more.
That's sort of what happens throughout most of the US and Canada, though. We have the local caller who is mostly doing teaching and calling dances somewhat on a teach level almost, which is fine. I mean, that's what, I applaud those callers who, we don't hang medals on them. We don't put their name up on lights or anything, but they're the ones producing dancers. Even if it's 2 couples a year, they're the ones that are really sustaining the activity. As a guest caller and whatnot, we don't have to work hard. Um, our home activities, of course, I hope we're all working hard at. Um, I mean, for me, the SSD program is going to help because I'm going to call this winter in Florida again. I've got 12 weeks to produce dancers. Well, then they leave and they go back to wherever they came from. They don't dance hardly at all because there's nothing there for them after only 12 weeks of lessons. We do a lot of dancing. From the first week on, they not only do the lessons, but they come to a dance and they get to participate in part of the dance. And it's totally social, as far as I'm concerned. So this gives me a great beginning spot for them. The next year they come back, they will maybe have participated in some of this SSD that's around the country, hopefully, if it grows well, and I'm hoping it does. So
I think one of the funny things about SSD is everybody keeps looking around and they keep going, that's not going to work, that's not going to do anything, blah, blah, blah. And the problem is they're still in the mindset of saving the program of or saving the activity of what they currently do, and that's not what it's there for.
No,
that's not going to save plus dancing. It's not going to save advanced dancing. It's not going to save any of these programs that we currently do. It's going to create a new program that is going to save square dancing in general, and later on down the road it will feed into those other programs, but not and it's not a magic pill. It's not a light switch. It's something that is base level, and it's a different product, as you were saying earlier. It's what product are you selling? Well, if you're selling to social square dancing, that's great. If you're trying to sell the hobby, you're going to have a hard time doing it.
it's tough when you mix the hobbyist with the social, because the hobbyist is telling those social dancers, oh, just wait until you do this. This teacup chain is the greatest thing since sliced bread. This convention is fantastic, blah, blah, blah. And it urges the social dancer to think, oh, I've got to do more. And unfortunately, that's, so some of their friends do move along to the plus level and leave them behind, and they feel left behind. So then they jump on the bandwagon, and so
Well,
they go to plus.
Let me tell you a real life thing. I had my SSD group. I had 3 ladies in it, and two of them wanted to learn more, and the third one was unsure. All 3 of them came to my extended application, learn the rest of mainstream and plus class. The 2 that wanted to learn more kept going, and they loved it. They kept learning, and they wanted to be the hobbyists, right? They wanted to learn more. The third one got through with it and went, this is too much for me. I don't want to do any more of this. So what did she do? She dropped back to my pure SSD group and stayed there. And she still brings more and more people, and continued to bring her friends, and even started her own club in another city that has now got 4 squares with another caller that is doing their stuff.
Jeremy,
and they just started after COVID.
With having done 3 SSD classes, Jeremy, are you finding a slow building of it? I mean, aside from this woman you hit the right person there. But
it's a very slow build for me, and I blame that on my club, because they're very bad at marketing. But
is it building?
Well, it's building and maintaining. Well, it was. I still haven't gotten them to start back up after COVID. But this lady that enjoyed the SSD again found a caller in a city that's 30 minutes away. It's not that far, but it's a good 30-minute hour drive from here. And they've started a group, and he's doing SSD, and it's built up to four squares now. And he's got a smattering of existing square dancers in there, or hobbyists, but most of the people in there, they're just dancing socially, and they're having a good time. And eventually, maybe they'll want to learn more and move on, but it's a different product. They'll be seeking a different product. They'll be seeking the more esoteric product, and not the social one.
ESSD, extended social square.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that this other caller is a decent caller and is able to
Yes.
entertain at SSD.
Well, I'm sure some of you know Jim Klein. He's the guy doing it.
Yeah. Good. That's you've got and this is what it takes: dancers that enjoy it enough to bring their friends in and grow it that way.
Right.
As I used to tell dancers at first night of class, your job is to bring them in the door the first night. My job is to want to make them come back regularly.
Right.
And
that's but again, so when you've got an area that is so ensconced and entrenched in dancing their plus and dancing their level and dancing their hobbyist level, like Dan is, SSD is not going to float. It's just not, unless you can convince a club to go rogue, and really embrace the program. That's what I had to do 3 years ago. I had to go rogue. I had to convince my club to go rogue and try this program, and now everybody in the area is doing it. But you got to have that one club that will commit to it. And that's. I'm not gonna talk about SSD anymore. I'm so tired of talking about it.
Keith, I'm going to repeat that I love your terminology of social square dancing versus hobby square dancing.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
Did you get my comment earlier when we were talking about new callers and opportunities to call, about the difference between a convention and a festival, square dance wise?
No, I missed that. Is it in the chat?
Yeah, and
I generally read the chat afterwards.
It was a teaser, but the thing is that basically when we go to a square dance festival, we use all these highly paid callers like you and Jeremy and anyway,
I'm available.
There's three or four of them, and then maybe a round dance queue or two, and we really we make a big deal of those. The only people that call. Used to be when we had a convention in this state, you used the callers paid to attend it because it was a convention. It wasn't a festival where you were going to get paid. It was where you want, and then everybody got an opportunity to call. You usually put somebody in charge of the program. And we still do. On the West Coast, we have the USA West. I just was down in San Diego. That does that. And, we also have the National Square Dance Convention. That does that. But in California, we've got a California Square Dance Convention. And what do they use? Paid callers. And, you should just have another festival, or another weekend somewhere else if you want to do that. If you want to have a convention, give the callers a chance to call, give the dancers a chance to dance, and give people a chance to do something else, like attend an education session or two. That's what a convention does.
The New England convention, the only thing different from what you said is that callers do not have to pay. They get in for nothing. They still have to pay their hotel fees and everything. So, but yeah, we're there to get an opportunity to call to all the New England people.
Yeah, I don't care if I have to pay or not. That's nice. That's very nice of them. That will probably get them a few extra callers doing that. But, my feeling is you got to put money into this, and, you pay your dues to Caller Lab. And if you think you're paying dues to Caller Lab, you ought to see what Roundalab charges. It's heavy, dude. They're paying more than $300 a year, the regular membership over there. So, I mean, nobody's making the money they need to pay for all this stuff. It's our hobby. And maybe that's the problem. You've got hobbyist callers. We love doing it, and I think Some people I saw at the USA West, they called a handy capable dancers, and they had a bunch. All they did all day long, they had them, but they had everybody else in the room too, and they do kind of like party stuff, and everybody could dance it. It was real easy. It was real social square dancing, and they do it all the time.
Yeah.
I like that observation about hobbyist square dancers. I mean, square dance callers. And I think that goes back to some of my question about why we choose to call. When I was pre-COVID, a friend of mine was, going back to his early musician roots and trying to relearn keyboard and put together a band. And he observed that I got for relatively little work, I got 2-4 hours a week of performance. Whereas if he was going to get any performance, it was a matter of booking something at a coffee shop, a month or 6 months out. And so, yeah, what are we hobbyists getting out of this is a valid question. I think probably useful for the SSD thing discussion.
Yeah, I do both, and I get call square dances much more frequently than I do music gigs. I will tell you that.
Yep. Yeah, I hate to say it's an easy way to get an audience, but given the way that I think most new callers, the energies they put into it, it's an easy way to get an audience. Well, y'all, Don's coming up with a presentation now.
I'm just hinting a little here.
I was all
It's
right.
almost my 100th anniversary.
All right, I've got things I would like to accomplish today. Speaking of hobbies.
Ditto.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for sticking in, keeping my mind stimulated.
Thanks
Joining
for
us.
100 episodes.
Yes, thank you
Yes.
for 100 episodes.
Well,
And
thanks for the special invite, because I've been kind of ignoring them, going yeah okay. the special invite was like, okay, well, I'll show up for a couple.
I think
For those
that's
of you-
marketing.
those of you who don't know, I did send an email to all previous presenters, or almost all of them, and I heard from a few that couldn't make it, and I had very happy to see a few show up, like Jeremy and Gerhard, and regular presenters like like Clark and Dan and Joe. But Jeremy, can I put you on the email list of people to advise of not special event? Well, anyone we have from now on will be special, but and Dan and I, we got a lot of talking. We both wrote a lot of notes down on this one. It's been a blast.
Absolutely.
And Jeremy, thank you for the recognition of us lasting longer than you guys did. It's who would have thought? Who would have thunk? Anyway, it's been a blast, and I hope we're gonna be able to get together on some more occasions when we had a chance to let our minds rest just a little.
Understandable completely.
So I'm going to bow out, and going to miss you guys next week. Take care. Bye.
Cool. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye now.